There is one word that just shattered the entire peace process: unreasonable. That's the word Iran used to describe the United States' proposal to end one of the most dangerous conflicts in the world right now. And that single word didn't just reject a plan, it revealed something much bigger. Because behind that rejection is one demand so powerful, so strategic, that it could decide not just the outcome of this war, but the future of global energy, global markets, and possibly global stability itself. Let's break down exactly what just happened. On March 25th, 2026, multiple verified sources confirmed the same turning point. According to the Associated Press, Iran dismissed a U.S. ceasefire proposal and issued its own counterproposal. At the same time, Al Jazeera reported that Iran had officially received the U.S. plan but called it maximalist and unreasonable. That wording matters, because in diplomacy, words are chosen carefully. Unreasonable doesn't mean needs adjustment, it means unacceptable. And when a country uses that language publicly, it's signaling that the gap between both sides is not small when it's structural. Now here's where things get critical. What exactly was in this U.S. proposal? According to Bloomberg, the plan included a major demand. Iran must dismantle its nuclear sites as part of a 15-point peace framework. That's not a minor concession. That's a fundamental shift in national security posture. From the U.S. perspective, this is about long-term stability. From Iran's perspective, this is about sovereignty. And that's exactly where the deal starts to break. But here's the part that changes everything. Iran didn't just reject the plan, it responded with a demand of its own. And according to Bloomberg, that demand was this: Iran wants formal authority over the Strait of Hormuz, along with reparations. That's the moment the negotiations stopped being about peace and started being about control. To understand why this demand is so explosive, you need to understand one simple fact. The Strait of Hormuz is not just another waterway. It is one of the most important energy choke points on Earth. Roughly 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply passes through it. That's not speculation. That's widely reported across major outlets, including Bloomberg and Global Energy coverage. So when Iran says it wants authority over Hormuz, it's not asking for a concession. It's asking to control a critical artery of the global economy. And Iran has already hinted at how that control would work. According to Al Jazeera, Iranian officials said that non-hostile ships may transit the strait, but only with coordination. That word, coordination, is key, because it implies permission. It implies oversight. It implies control. Now step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. On one side, the United States is demanding nuclear dismantlement. On the other side, Iran is demanding control over one of the world's most important oil routes. Those are not overlapping positions. Those are opposing frameworks for how the region should function after the war. And that's why this deal didn't just stall, it collapsed. But here's where things get even more complex, because this is not happening in a vacuum. While these negotiations were unfolding, the war itself never stopped. Bloomberg confirmed that Iranian strikes continued even as talks were being discussed. Al Jazeera reported that while the U.S. claimed diplomacy was ongoing, Iran was still launching attacks toward Israel. This creates a situation experts often describe as fighting while talking. It's not peace, it's not a ceasefire, it's simultaneous pressure. And that pressure is showing up everywhere, from military activity to economic shocks to real-world consequences affecting millions of people. Let's talk about the economic side for a moment, because this is where the impact becomes impossible to ignore. According to Bloomberg, Asia is already bracing for worst-case energy scenarios as the war continues. They also reported signs of jet fuel hoarding across parts of the region. And in one of the most striking examples, Bloomberg noted that in parts of Bangladesh, fuel lines are stretching up to 1 kilometer long. That's not a theoretical crisis. That's happening right now. In the Philippines, Bloomberg confirmed that the government has declared an energy emergency due to supply shortages. And in India, one of the world's largest oil importers, Bloomberg reported a major move. India has purchased 60 million barrels of Russian oil for April. That's not a small adjustment, that's a strategic shift. It suggests that major economies are already preparing for prolonged disruption in traditional supply routes, including Hormuz. Even outside Asia, the effects are spreading. According to Bloomberg's CityLab coverage, diesel prices in California have surged past $7 per gallon, hitting record highs. And in Japan, Bloomberg reported that even everyday costs, including food during cherry blossom season, are rising due to the energy shock. This is how a geopolitical conflict turns into a global economic event. It starts in a narrow waterway and ends up affecting daily life across continents. Now bring this back to the negotiations, because this is where everything connects. Iran's demand for Hormuz authority is not happening randomly. It's happening at the exact moment when the world is feeling the consequences of that waterway being disrupted. That gives Iran leverage, real leverage. At the same time, the United States is pushing for a framework that removes long-term threats. specifically nuclear capabilities. That gives the US its own strategic objective. So what you're seeing is not just a disagreement, it's a clash of priorities, control versus security, access versus influence. And in the middle of that clash, there is still no agreement. According to the Associated Press, the US plan has been rejected. According to Al Jazeera, it has been labeled unreasonable. According to Bloomberg, Iran has countered with demands that fundamentally reshape regional power dynamics. So where does this go next? Right now, both tracks are still active. Diplomacy has not disappeared, military activity has not stopped. And global markets are reacting in real time. Interestingly, Bloomberg also reported that stocks have risen and oil prices have fallen slightly at times as markets weigh the possibility of a truce. That tells you something important. Investors still believe a resolution is possible, but they also know it's far from guaranteed, and that brings us back to the central issue. The one demand that changed everything. Because if there is no agreement on the Strait of Hormuz, then there is no stable outcome. Iran is asking for recognized authority over it. The United States is pushing for a broader restructuring of Iran's strategic capabilities. And neither side has shown signs of backing down from those core positions. That's why this moment matters. Not because a deal was rejected, but because of what replaced it. A negotiation that is no longer about ending a war quickly, but about defining what the region looks like after the war ends. And that's a much bigger question, because the answer doesn't just affect Iran or the United States. It affects energy markets, it affects global trade, it affects inflation, supply chains, and economic stability worldwide. And it all comes back to a single, narrow stretch of water, 33 kilometers wide, carrying millions of barrels of oil every single day, and now sitting at the center of one of the most important geopolitical negotiations in the world. So when you hear that Iran rejected a plan, understand what that really means. It means the gap between both sides is still wide. It means the stakes are still rising. And it means the outcome is still uncertain. Because this was never just about a ceasefire. It was about control. And that question is still unresolved. If you want to understand where this conflict goes next, don't just watch the headlines, watch the strait. But to really understand why this moment is so critical, you have to look at what didn't happen. There was no partial agreement, no temporary framework, no sign of compromise. Instead, what we got was something far more revealing. A complete rejection, followed by a counter-demand that raises the stakes even higher. And that tells you something important. This is no longer a negotiation about ending conflict quickly. This is a negotiation about who defines the rules after the conflict ends. Because think about the structure of both proposals. The US plan, as reported by Bloomberg, centers on dismantling nuclear infrastructure. That's a long-term objective. It's about preventing future escalation. It's about reshaping Iran's strategic capabilities for years, even decades ahead. But Iran's counter-demand? It's immediate, it's operational, it's about control right now. Authority over the Strait of Hormuz means influence over global energy flows today, not years from now. And that difference in timing is critical. One side is negotiating for the future. The other is negotiating from present leverage. And in negotiations like this, the side with immediate leverage often has the advantage. Now, let's go deeper into that leverage, because it's not just about geography, it's about timing, pressure, and global dependency. According to Bloomberg's reporting, the disruption linked to the conflict has already forced major economies to rethink their energy strategies. India's 60 million barrel purchase isn't just a number, it's a signal. It signals that one of the world's largest importers is not expecting a quick return to normal supply conditions. And when countries start making decisions like that, they're not reacting to headlines, they're reacting to risk. The same pattern is visible across multiple regions. In Southeast Asia, Bloomberg reported jet fuel hoarding behavior. That only happens when markets anticipate shortages. In the Philippines, the declaration of an energy emergency shows how quickly local economies can feel the impact of disruptions thousands of kilometers away. And in parts of Africa, Bloomberg noted that governments are already warning citizens against fuel hoarding, trying to prevent panic from turning into a full-blown supply crisis. These are not isolated developments. They are connected. They are all downstream effects of uncertainty around one key question. Will the Strait of Hormuz remain reliably open?